Well, you've heard testimonies about the uniqueness and the value of this summer program. And so I won't go into all of my gratitude to both of the Dr. Allenses and to all the teachers who've taught in it, as well as the ones that have attended it. It is a remarkable thing. But I want to devote my time this evening to a topic that seems to me tremendously important in our day, and that is the authority of the teacher. If I can find where to leave off the first part, which was thanking everybody, but I think they've been thanked enough. All right, so the important issue, it seems to me, that we're celebrating this evening is not just a remarkable program, and it's not just the transforming power of great literature, but it is great literature in the minds and the hearts of teachers, because it's a different thing when it's transmitted by a teacher. And so I wanted to speak about the authority of the teacher in our day. And sad to say, the authority of the teacher has been, for a century or so, at an all-time low. Perhaps it's changing. There may be signs that the teacher's being recognized. But at any rate, up until now, the teacher has been perhaps the least considered in the whole educational system. Their traditional role, already shaken in the past century by dubious educational theory, has been all but demolished in the present age. Now, an intensified individualism raises questions concerning the right of teachers to require the same standards for students of diverse backgrounds, tending to make teachers into arbitrators rather than instructors. And incessant standardized testing has reduced their role even further to clerk or drill master. And language is no longer the teacher's free field. Indeed, a casual, good-humored remark may cost a teacher her job, as may a consoling hand on a student's arm. Further, the World Wide Web and new technologies threaten to render formal education irrelevant. Indeed, the moral authority of educational institutions in general has been so greatly diminished that teachers are given little control over their classes or their curriculum. They find themselves increasingly unable to perform the traditional role assigned to the teaching profession over the ages, which is the presentation to a world in the making of a new generation that has been shaped by the wisdom of the past. What this means is that heretofore the transmission of ideals and standards has been fully as important as the imparting of information and skills. Nevertheless, despite whatever difficulties teachers encounter and whatever disregard society may have in general for them, to ask what authority they have is a little like asking, what authority does a mother have or a father have? The teacher's authority is one of those ancient, immemorial powers, like a parent's, that we ought to be able to take for granted, trusting that it's simply in the nature of things. And we could perhaps give a Darwinian explanation for a teacher's importance, that somehow they proved valuable to the surviving of a particular tribe. But I don't think that is a very good account, because teachers are prior to community and not post, not after. Poets have done better jobs of giving us images of the teacher. Think of the Titan Prometheus, and the satyrs, and the goddess Athena, and the Sibyl, the archetypal wise old man in so many myths and legends, Merlin the magician, of the Arthurian romances on up to Prospero in The Tempest. And in all of these, the teacher is connected somehow with the community's origins, with that transformation into cohesion that enabled people to think of themselves as we. The teacher in these myths, in fact, is endowed with a kind of magic, or at least some sort of occult power. Their sorcery is an important symbol, for it signifies the ability to enchant and hence to see beyond the physical, pointing to invisible bonds within the community. But after Prospero's magic, after he renounced his magic, standing on the brink of modernity, few teacher figures have emerged in literature, and those coming after Prospero's white magic have had to work with something less benevolent. We could mention Goethe's Faust, and we could think of some of the characters in Dostoevsky's novels, Stepan Berkovinsky, who treats his classical knowledge as a kind of pseudo-magic, but he destroys his students' lives. And we think of Marlowe in Conrad's Lord Jim, who looks for some kind of standards, some overriding metaphysical standards for defining honor, and can't find them. But Faulkner's Sam Fathers, of his Go Down Moses, still has the magic, the tribal lore of the ancient predecessors, who, though they've died, have not quitted the earth. In the portion of the novel called The Old People, Cass Edmonds says to his cousin Isaac, after the boy has shot his first deer and has seen what looked like the phantom of a huge buck walk out of the wilderness. And Cass says, all that must be somewhere. He's referring to all the creatures who have lived and died. All that could not have been invented and created just to be thrown away. Look at the seed, the acorns, at what happens even to carrion when you try to bury it. It refuses, seethes and struggles too, until it reaches light and air again. Hunting the air still, hunting the sun still. And they and the boy saw sky where the scoured and icy stars glittered. They don't want it, need it. Besides, what would it want itself, knocking around out there, when it never had enough time about the earth as it was, when there's plenty of room about the earth, plenty of places still unchanged from what they were when the blood used and pleasured in them while it was still blood. But we want them, the boy said. We want them too. There's plenty of room for us and them too. So Faulkner is telling us through the mouth of his characters that creation has value and that we have to have an imagination that can accommodate all its dimensions. We have to have somewhere in our imaginations for our sacred heritage to be. I'm not speaking theologically. I'm not speaking of a religion. I'm speaking poetically. There has to be some sort of invisible realm, some magical design equal to our human aspirations, not simply infinite dark matter and black holes. For after losing the Ptolemaic image of the universe with its crystalline spheres surrounding the precious terrain, the paradiso into which Dante the poet makes his way at the summit of his journey, where do we say poetically that the past goes? We let it just be dead in our literature and in the literature we study. Teachers need some alternative to the bare and inadequate fact, some symbol of the spiritual realm, the larger imaginative whole to which great literature takes us. They need further to be able to inculcate some image of a living heritage to which their students' hearts can respond, feeling a stirring of loyalty and pride one to which they owe allegiance. Teachers need a cosmos. To conjure up this vision, they possess something of an occult power. But in a radically neutralized world, they're allowed to use this gift less and less until finally it disappears. One thinks of Glendower's boast, "I can call spirits from the vasty deep," he says, and of Hotspur's cynical reply, "But when you call them, will they come?" Teachers are likely to feel themselves challenged in that same manner. Yet though they're increasingly prevented from exercising their full spiritual power, we can say at the outset that teachers are not and can never be mere educational tools or equipment, nor are they simply in loco parentis, an adjunct to the family, though families have their own role in teaching children values. But teachers bear a responsibility to the human race, not to be found in the bloodline. They're emissaries for a heritage other than the DNA structure. And in the same way, they're not part of the political establishment. Their work is to impart not official knowledge, subject to the politics of the day, but a timeless heritage, a body of wisdom belonging to the community, which, however, teachers alone transmit. Now, this last is a strong statement, that teachers alone transmit this body of wisdom. And it seems on the face of it highly questionable. Surely learned scholars, writers, readers of every sort could be said to access this repository of human wisdom. But only teachers represent an entire body of knowledge. Now, they do not, of course, possess it. They're emissaries. They're a bridge to it by their very act of commitment. And they perform this role no matter how inadequate their own education may be. Through their dedication to their work, not simply through their knowledge or their originality. They have a key to another world, which, like magic, they carry about as an inner power to open doors for others. So it's not a body of facts or any sort of ready-made learning that distinguishes the effective teacher. It's a commitment to and a belief in intangibles, qualities, rather than quantities, moral and spiritual values, not taught directly, but carried on the back of the information being taught. What alters the students and gradually transforms them is the signals of transcendence that a teacher gives out. Now, I emphasize that I'm not speaking of religion, but of a precious sense of value present in the world around us, the sacred dimension that human things possess. Now, this spiritual perception is necessary to the body politic. See, we will not long have patriotism or loyalty to country or to ideals without it. In fact, it's irreplaceable if a community is to produce free persons. Hence, though this repository of wisdom, to which I'm maintaining teachers bear witness, certainly exists on its own in books or manuscripts accessible to private individuals, but it's through teachers alone that its life is preserved and constantly explored. Only the teacher approaches this wisdom not to possess it, but to channel it, to profess that it exists. I don't mean to argue that teachers have or even should have an encyclopedic knowledge, or that they're in any sense gurus. I'm suggesting that as teachers, they bear witness to the transforming power of the realm of intangibles, which is their specific charge. They bear witness as members of a profession and a calling that in representing a cumulative body of knowledge which satisfies a necessary need in society, that this need is important. This need is the why and wherefore, as Faulkner would say, of the professions. Without lawyers, we would certainly still have to try to arbitrate, to make just decisions, as we would have to make medical ones without doctors. But those decisions would be erratic and difficult, some brilliant and some misguided. The same may be said of the teaching profession. People can learn without it, and certainly will nowadays from the World Wide Web and constant media coverage. Though without a teacher, their learning will be erratic and some of it enlightening, but a great deal of it misleading and even dangerous. What I suppose I'm saying is that teachers are members of a necessary and heretofore respected profession. They profess. They're professors. And I'm saying that their concern for learning is a concern for others, and hence a service to the community, and that society can't do without them. And that what they profess is nothing less than the moral and spiritual wisdom necessary for the survival of our civilization. Individuals can no doubt make contact with this vast reservoir of achieved knowledge on their own, but its full volume, and in a sense its public dimension, are lost if we ignore those who take as their life work its dissemination. It's not that teachers possess all that wisdom, as I've said, but that they profess it. They believe in it. And this perspective generated by the realm over which they preside, the classroom, is a long memory, free of the prejudices of the day. This is why it's a violation to politicize the classroom. Its serene air offers a larger view of reality than the immediately political. The classroom opens up a timeless perspective. It was in the classroom that Melville's masterpiece, Moby Dick, soared over the shallow tastes of the day and was seen to be what it is, one of the world's classics, having long been dismissed by readers and reviewers. It's in the classroom that Shakespeare has been kept alive, even though sporadic performances of his have been from time to time produced on stage. Milton would be a rarity, indeed, had not Paradise Lost been studied in the classroom. But we're losing these texts as we've lost the Iliad, the plays of Aeschylus, and the Divine Comedy. We're in process of losing the Aeneid, though it was one of the founding documents of our nation and the most widely read book up through the 19th century, apart from the Bible. The way we keep these great works alive is for our teachers to know them and to refer to them. The authority of teachers comes then not from having an extraordinarily large body of information themselves, but from a commitment to the age-old heritage of wisdom in their keeping, from consenting to be its medium and using whatever spiritual powers are available to effect its transmission. But above all else, teachers are the bearers of something they consider more significant than themselves, more important than any method, something of enormous value to the culture. Teachers have faith in education. They believe that people can be changed, and they make themselves vehicles for this transformation. They become less and less their private, personal selves, and more the conveyor of what they profess, what they bear across to others. There are many metaphors for them. Socrates called teachers midwives, which is a good figure, but I should prefer to think of them as Hermes figures, as guides, as messengers, for they do not simply bring to birth something already present in the pupil, though hidden. They actually conduct their students into new territory. First, having imported, as it were, postcards from that territory into the classroom. There are so many metaphors. Teachers are the bearers further of memory, of what's worth saving from the past, memorable because in it is a record of humanity exceeding itself, something that needs to be part of our record, a wisdom and a craft which conveyed to the young in the present produces some sort of alchemy that we might call, with the poet Keats, soul-making. It might be said that soul-making, then, what the Greeks called paideia, is the occupation of teachers, even when they're drilling their pupils in facts and skills. In one of the oldest stories we have of a teacher, Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, we're told that Prometheus, the Titan, took pity on human beings in their ignorance. He says, I found them witless and gave them the use of their wits and made them masters of their minds. For men at first had eyes, but saw to no purpose. They had ears, but did not hear. Like the shapes of dreams, they dragged through their long lives and handled all things in bewilderment and confusion. Prometheus taught them all the arts and crafts, but chiefly he transformed them by enabling them to see and to understand, symbolized by the metaphor of stealing fire from the gods. Prometheus is our archetype image of the teacher, someone who undergoes torment so that humankind can be transformed. In the story to which I've already referred, the old people, from Faulkner's book, Go Down Moses, we're told that before the boy Isaac is allowed to kill his first deer, he has had long hours of instruction in the practical skills of the hunt by his mentor, Sam Fathers. He taught the boy the woods, we're told, to hunt, when to shoot and when not to shoot, when to kill and when not to kill, and better what to do with it afterward. Such skills are all important to the boy, but they go hand in hand with a different kind of teaching. Even more important, Sam taught the boy how to see and respect the old people, the spiritual voices of the wilderness that represent the body of wisdom of which the teacher is guardian, the values as well as the practicalities of the hunt. And Sam's method is the eternal method of the teacher. The boy would just wait and then listen. And Sam would begin talking about the old days and the people whom he had not had time even to know, and so could not remember. This is the boy he's talking about. And as Sam talked about those old days and those dead and vanished men of another race, from either that the boy knew, gradually to the boy, those old times would cease to be old times and would become a part of the boy's present, not only as if they had happened yesterday, but as if they were still happening. The men who walked through them actually walking in breath and air and casting an actual shadow on the earth they had not quitted. And it would finally seem that it was he, the boy, who was the guest here. And Sam Father's voice was the mouthpiece of the host. No passage in literature more fully captures the sense of magic educed by a teacher. The great figures out of the past take over. These long-departed figures out of Sam Father's tales dominate the scene, just as Achilles, when we bring him into the classroom, dwarfs his space. Students with a good teacher are as mesmerized by Helen as the elders of Troy were, who view her as she walks by them on the ramparts of their besieged city. Odysseus charms his audience with his mind like the gods. Hamlet and Lear are so imposing that students come to feel they're guests of these regal presences and might just be considered intruders. And in the education of Isaac McCaslin, what the boy is taught by Sam Fathers is not shaped by his preferences or his abilities. Rather, the boy is the one being shaped. He has to take in the material, maintain an openness to it, accommodate himself to it, measure up to it, learning, as he says, both humility and pride in the process. The wilderness where the hunt occurs is the symbol for the numinous presence for which the boy must be readied, a universal realm of memory and heroism that he must live up to. By the time Isaac is allowed to go on the bear hunt with the men, the old bear has taken on mythological status. We're told the boy had already inherited, without ever having seen it, the old bear with one trap-ruined foot that in an area almost 100 miles square had earned for himself a name, a definite designation, like a living man. In the boy's imagination, from having been taught, it ran in his knowledge before he ever saw it. It loomed and towered in his dreams before he even saw the unaxed woods where it left its crooked print, shaggy, tremendous, red-eyed, not malevolent, but just big. It was as if the boy had already divined what his sense and intellect had not yet encompassed, that doomed wilderness whose edges were being constantly and punily gnawed at by men with plows and axes who feared it because it was wilderness. And so we are given not simply a picture of a wilderness disappearing, but of something from the past that the boy had to imagine before he could see, before he could actually go on the hunt and take part in it. It had to run in his imagination because his teacher had put it there. His teacher had made him, with the teacher's magic, had made the boy understand and know the significance of the bear. Sam's tales and visions of the heroic tradition of the past, along with his coaching and drilling in the techniques of woodsmanship, ready the boy for his encounter with the bear, who finally shows himself to the boy as in a theophany, like a god. Now, the boy's entire life will be shaped by this experience, which would not have been possible for him without Sam's tale-telling and his coaching and drilling. Both his skills and his imagination had to be ready for the event. But the teacher does not produce the vision. The teacher must simply be convinced that the vision is possible, that what he teaches is real. The teacher has to have seen the bear, has to believe in it, respect it, and it's this aspect of the teacher's work that is in danger today. It's the belief in the vision of the bear that is being lost in our schools. And this is where the teaching of the classics comes in. Now we are standing at a time of great change. And so I want to end by reading a paragraph or two from Louise Cowan's book. New forms and structures are already carrying the burden of the energies of our society. Young people sense this change in the depths of their being and are seeking ways to fulfill the new sorts of tasks. The new sorts of tasks to which they're called. Educational systems in our time have, for the most part, ignored the realities of such a change. And he goes on to say, when a potentially violent situation is triggered, it could set off explosive reactions in many areas at once, initiating a general conflagration of great magnitude. And he speaks of the uncomfortable premonition that some 30 years from the time he's writing, which is now, the social scene will contain imbalances interlocked enough for one misadventure to cause a general catastrophe. But he goes on to say that our hope is in the specifically human qualities that we educate our young with. And he says education is the only heritage that we can give a generation that will have to make the transition and thus for a time bear the world on its shoulders like Heracles relieving Atlas. Now, responding to that challenge, we reply with some seriousness that the burden of this education falls on teachers who must prepare these young heroes destined to carry on our tradition of freedom and dignity. To undertake this task, teachers must be given the authority of their disciplines. Now, how do we regain that authority? And the answer is from within. They have to have seen the bear. Teachers find their inner authority awakened and enhanced by an experience with the immortal works of Homer, Virgil, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Dante, and Shakespeare. It's in these great works that the heroic images shaping our civilization are to be found. And so we come, finally, to the important issue that this evening is celebrating: the necessity of keeping alive the tradition, the classics of the Western world, without which teachers lack their magic. To relinquish our connection with these texts is deliberately to choose our decline as a noble people. As Lynn Cheney once declared when she was still head of the NEH, the teacher's summer program at the Dallas Institute is indeed a model for the nation. Thank you.